and what's blocking your purpose. Because sometimes there can be things in life that are hindering us from reaching the level that we're supposed to reach or getting to the place in life that we're supposed to get to. So if we can understand some of these things about ourselves, then we can do better and move forward. The first thing that stands out to me about the ENFJ is they can go into a very deep, dark space. And people probably don't realize that about an ENFJ. They can tap into an area that is depressing or harsh. It could be for several hours, it could be for several days. It's almost like the ENFJ has taken on so many people, so many emotions, so many things, until their box just fills up so far that now they're dealing with a lot of internal conflict that needs to be worked out. Some people deal with that by constantly having activities that they're doing or staying busy because they don't want to deal with it. Some people don't want to be alone too much or not have anything to do because they don't want to go to that place. However, I think sometimes with an ENFJ, it is important to delve into that area because it's where you heal. It's where you grow. It's where you deal with whatever it is that's bothering you, that's upsetting you, that's in your way. It's a very private thing. Part of it is because their intuition can go so deep down into the psyche that it's like they have dived deep within themselves and they're digging around in gravel trying to figure things out or deal with that depression that they're feeling or that anger or that despair. It's not a good feeling to feel. Most ENFJs deal with that by pulling away, needing some quiet time, pushing people away. They might go ghost, like you're supposed to be meeting for something and all of a sudden they can't show up or they just don't show up. It's probably because they've tapped into that arena, and it just, when someone is feeling that bad or dealing with that much chaos and that many emotions, they need to be alone. And because sometimes being around people can make it worse if they're trying to deal with feeling awful and there's too much interference, or they can't have that moment to retreat so that they can start to come back up. They can become very frustrated, irritable, angry, mean. Sometimes it's okay to take a moment and say, I can't talk on the phone right now. Because you know that if you do, you might lash out at somebody that you really care about, and so why do that? So take a moment, take some time to deal with that space so that it doesn't build and hinder your purpose in life. What could trigger that is not reaching something that's important, or someone hurts their feelings, or it's triggered by something that they see. Another thing that can hinder an ENFJ is not being able to execute. When you have an extroverted J personality, they need to execute. They need to conquer. They need to make things happen. And when there's too much interference with that, too many blocks, too many things crumbling and just not working out, that is very frustrating and maddening to an ENFJ. It can even shut them down. What happens is their NI, their introverted intuition, starts to get in the way. For one thing, they may start to see too many possibilities, so they're playing around with every single one and they can't figure out which one would be the perfect one, or they're using that introverted intuition to fast forward into the future and kind of play things out and know what's going to work, what's not. It can be extremely devastating. It's annoying because you are having to stop yourself from something that you feel very passionate about. It could be a relationship. That NI fast forwarding can get in the way of a relationship flourishing that you know is not right. Also, because an ENFJ is willing to play with lots of possibilities, try different things, and if everything fails and everything doesn't seem to work, they start learning failure. They can retreat and start to give up on their purpose because they're using up a lot of energy and getting nowhere with it. So that definitely gets in the way of purpose. So what do you do about that, ENFJs? Ask yourself that. What do you do to get out of your own way? Another hindrance for purpose is sometimes an ENFJ may want purpose and they can't think of any ideas. So even though they're possibility people, they are not like their INFP cousin who can come up with lots of ideas. Another thing that gets in the way of purpose is distrust. ENFJs sometimes only trust themselves. Now that doesn't mean that if they have a problem that they don't mind bouncing it off of many different people, but they're ultimately going to make their own decision. So since they can't hand their issue over to someone else or a project completely, when an ENFJ is working as a team in the workplace, sometimes they can trust other people more than they trust themselves on a particular project. So I'm not saying that, but when it starts to become personal, it's like, first of all, I gotta ask somebody for help. Second of all, sometimes in the midst of their confusion or their indecisiveness, they're sort of trying to work out little details, or they might have little hang-ups, but because people are used to seeing the ENFJ in such a positive light, they can tick into an area of not being mean, but where they need to ask a lot of questions and delve into these little tiny details that other people might think, who cares? But for them, it's like, this thing is bothering me and I need to work these kinks out and figure this thing out. So not really being able to put their trust in other people can hinder them from reaching their purpose, because they know that they're going to have some hang-ups along the way that somebody else might not agree with. Too many difficult people can hinder the purpose of an ENFJ. Sometimes ENFJs can feel like they can save people or rescue people because they understand them. It's like, I'm walking around in your head. I feel what you feel. They can truly take on another person's feelings, and that gives you the illusion that you can also save them and make things better. And sometimes you can, but sometimes you can't. Sometimes a person's problems are so deep that there's really nothing you can do, and that person will start to sink you as you try to save and rescue them, and then you're laced with guilt because you have been overcapacitated by your emotions. You can't handle it anymore because they're needing you or asking for way too much. And when you say no to that person, then they start getting defensive, they get angry, they start punishing you, all of that. So I think ENFJs have to protect themselves. They have to self-preserve. It's okay to help people, and it can even be fun and enjoyable and rewarding. And ENFJs can be really good at it, but you have to also be okay with setting up some boundaries. Sometimes an ENFJ will say, well, I know how I feel, or I know how I would feel if someone was rejecting me this way, but sometimes you have to do that in life, and you have to just accept that. In some ways, an ENFJ is super in touch with their emotions and super in touch with nuances of who they are, which prevents them from angering people, from stepping on toes, from creating disharmony, all of that stuff. Sometimes an issue can be so painful that you find yourself spinning your wheels and not being able to get traction or get out of it. Sometimes if it's too deep and too painful, sometimes you do have to kind of bury it and move forward with your purpose, because in order to heal it, it would be excruciating, and sometimes it's not worth it. Many times people can kind of go along with an ENFJ's ideas, but let's say that they don't. Let's say that they squash their ideas or don't like them or disagree with them. Sometimes an ENFJ can become undone by that. So you have to be really careful about that. It can send them into a place of feeling very much rejected. Like, if I can't motivate you, then there's something wrong with me. I'm a failure. It might make them feel very inadequate. If there's someone who just doesn't really like the ENFJ, they can be undone with that because they're not used to that. And their feelings can be so hurt that it can set them backwards. If someone questions an ENFJ's motives or questions their values, an ENFJ can turn into a monster. They might get very, very upset and not handle that very well. Because an ENFJ in their mind, they are sure that they're sure that they're sure. So for someone to go against that when they have that type of a conviction or a value is extremely upsetting to them. They can take it way too personal. You have to accept the fact that sometimes people's value systems are totally different or their ideas are completely different, and that's okay. And let them have theirs and you have yours. It does not mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you should quit. It doesn't mean that you should drop whatever your value is because this group over here didn't see it. There might be another group that would entertain it and love it and be very grateful for it. Another thing that can hinder their purpose is feeling guilt, like extreme out of control guilt for things that they have no power over or things that are not their fault. So guilt is a monster for an ENFJ. They can go into a place of confusion. When their emotions get in the way, sometimes they can misread things and people in that sense. Because usually their intuition on people and things is accurate and very strong, but sometimes when their feelings, their hurt feelings get in the way, sometimes they can do somersaults in their head, playing with an issue, trying to figure it out, and start to distort it into something completely different, like they're thinking too deeply and too hard about it. So they have to learn to lighten up a little bit when they see that they're going into that realm of thinking. They are generally used to people really liking them and revering them in many ways, and sometimes they can even think, why do people like me? I don't deserve it, because in their mind they feel like, they can feel kind of like I'm a bad person because sometimes their morals and ethics can be so high. So I hope this helps you, and I would encourage all ENFJs to get out there and find your purpose, conquer it, and make your dreams come true because you are truly capable and deserving of that. So thank you so much for watching my video. Please hit the thumbs up if you liked it, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye.